in present day 2025, we cannot handle a little diva moment anymore. Hello, you are tuned in to Starstruck with Big Pink Energy, who is me. Maybe you're here for a chat about pop culture, music news or gossip, or maybe you're here because secretly you're in love with me. How exciting would that be? Today, I'm talking about the phenomenon of the diva. Sometimes being called a diva is a negative. It means you're self-absorbed or dramatic. And sometimes when we're in the mood for supporting empowered women, being called a diva is actually a term of endearment. It's a positive. Divas are fun and they are entertaining. And we, the public, love them for giving us moments that we then call iconic. However, this love of the divas is conditional, and we don't seem to treat all divas equally. On a basic level, we all understand that celebrities aren't our friends. They don't know who we are. And they exist to sell products and make lots of money. So despite the fact that we all know this, why do we feel disappointed in them when time and time again they act in ways that we dislike? I cannot believe we are having the exact same conversation about Doechii at the Met Gala and her umbrellas that we're having about Chappell Roan and her fans, that we're also having about Tyler claiming she's not inspired by Britney Spears, that we're also having about Ariana Grande and her relationships, and maybe I could go on, and maybe I will, but I think that's enough for now. You get the idea. Before I get into this properly, I do want to say I think this pressure to be likeable and relatable falls harder on women than men because, to be quite frank, traits that are dislikable in women are seen as strengths in men. It's a good thing if men are able to seduce lots of women, if they are fierce protectors. I'd even argue like showing vulnerability as a man now is seen as a strength. Maybe it didn't used to be, but I don't think anymore are we in that age of like everything being super about machismo. Men can be vulnerable, men can talk about mental health, men can do the smallest act of kindness, men can do the most basic form of feminism, and we all applaud it. But women are not favoured in the same way. Why are OnlyFans models targeted for making a living and not the men who actually spend money on them? Why are we happy for teen girls to go bankrupt for Taylor Swift tickets, but when Oasis do a comeback tour, there's finally enough pressure on Ticketmaster to demand change? Girls and gays have been victims of dynamic pricing on Ticketmaster and Live Nation for a long, long time now, but when it's middle-aged men and their favourite band, all of a sudden the world listens to their complaints about dynamic pricing, about ticket scalpers, and the issue is suddenly like taken really seriously in a way that it just wasn't before. So when it comes to celebrities acting out, I really think the double standards do continue here. Yes, there are anomalies, there are, cases that don't meet the same trend, but on the whole, in general, I don't see the same levels of outrage for male public figures as I do for women. Dare I say something controversial? Doechii is a musician. Her job is to create music and to perform. I don't like that she spoke rudely, but I also cannot fathom what people want to achieve by dragging her name through the mud. Why should I be upset with Doechii? Let me ask you this. Why should I invest my energy into being upset with her when the world is literally in chaos? We have Kanye West making an album about Hitler. We have Elon Musk doing Nazi salutes on stage. We have governments stripping trans people of their rights. We have J.K. Rowling celebrating every single thing the government does to do with trans people on Twitter, and her army of TERFs in the replies gassing her up. Like, all of that's happening, and you want me to be upset that Doechii was doing too much at the Met Gala, of all places. The place where you're supposed to do the do the most. The place where you're supposed to do the most, Doechii was doing too much, and I'm supposed to be upset about that. When I make this point, I usually get people in my comments telling me that we can be upset with multiple things at once, and I'm just going to say right now, I hate when I get these kind of comments. Like people telling me the obvious in my comments will always be a pet peeve, and I can't always do my best and rise above and not reply to stupid things like that, because it just really grinds my gears. I don't know what to tell you. Yes, if you choose to be upset with Doechii for asking for more umbrellas at the Met Gala, I cannot stop you from feeling that way. You can feel however you want to feel, and you're going to feel however you feel. But what I can do is propose that maybe, just maybe, it's not that serious. And there's tons of things you can put your energy towards, even just within the celebrity world alone, that would be way more productive, let alone in like the entire world, like outside of the celebrity sphere. There's a lot we can be doing with our energy. And yeah, you can be invested in multiple things at once, but it just doesn't make sense to me why Doechii at the Met Gala would really be something that anyone would want to spend that much time investing their emotion into. And yes, I would also challenge you to open your mind and ask yourself if you'd care this much if it were a man. And I hate to always be the person saying, if it were a man, but truly, if it were a man, would you care that much? If it were a man talking rudely to his team at an event, do you think there'd be the levels of discourse around it that we've had with Doechii? Because I think people would probably just shrug and move on, honestly, because when you break it down, it's not actually that eventful what happened. Especially if the man had a redeeming quality on par with Doechii's musical talent. Lest we forget Chris Brown. I mean, this is literally in the news right now. Chris Brown is finally in jail. Don't come for me. I'm not saying jail is a perfect construct, but justice is finally being served in some form, even if it's small, for Chris Brown. He has recently announced a stadium tour. We all know Chris Brown. We all know what he did, and we all know that it wasn't just one incident. He didn't just beat up, like brutally beat up one of the most beloved pop stars on the planet. He's had multiple violent outbursts, domestic violence allegations. I think it's pretty clear what kind of person Chris Brown is. I think it's pretty clear he hasn't really grown and changed from that incident all those years ago. But he's supposed to be, but he's in jail. He's supposed to be going on tour this summer in stadiums, and people have actually bought tickets. Like, they've paid their money to go and see Chris Brown perform at a stadium. I don't get it. Even if you paid me to go, I would be thinking like, okay, I'm getting money, but I also now have to be seen in public at a Chris Brown show. So that's where my line of thinking is going. But then you've got people that are actually paying to do that. That's, the mind boggles. I don't get it. Anyway, what I'm saying is, men, there's more grace for men. You can have this much talent and people will accept your apology. Even if you don't apologize, you don't have to even apologize, and people will be there riding for you when you're a man. When you're a woman, it's a big issue, and we're going to talk about it on Twitter and Reddit and TikTok for days and days and days and days. That's the difference. The part that interests me here, obviously, is that we never seem to tire of having a woman to hate on. I just spoke about Katy Perry in my last podcast episode, so I don't think I need to go into too much detail about all of that mess. But before Doechii, it was Katy Perry, and before Katy Perry, it was Chappell Roan like 10 times. The most recent one being a video where Chappell Roan allegedly shoves someone and physically assaults them on a red carpet. I don't know. I watched the video. And you know, maybe I live in a different universe, but it looked to me like what happened on that red carpet with Chappell Roan was literally just her accidentally walking near somebody. It looks like an interaction nearly every person living in a place where other people live has had. Like, I think I've had interactions like that at least 10 times every time I take a journey on the tube in London. Like, it just happens where people are. You might accidentally walk into someone sometimes. But this video of Chapel Roan on the red carpet shoving someone, it got people very upset, very heated. Chapel Roan generally, for me, is a very interesting case study of how we feel about women, artists, and divas, of course, in general. We love vintage clips of Mariah Carey interviews where she's shading anybody and everybody. It was seen as iconic when Beyonce yelled, "Somebody's getting fired." But in present day 2025, we cannot handle a little diva moment anymore. Chapel Roan asking fans not to approach her, asking for hugs and photos when she's out and about in public was such a huge talking point. And yes, while I did see that she was met with a lot of empathy from people, the majority of the sentiment I saw was that she's ungrateful and she hates her fans and she doesn't deserve her fans. She doesn't deserve her career. She should just disappear from the public if she doesn't like what comes with being in the public eye, was generally the sentiment I saw around Chapel Roan. I've spoken about this a little bit before on TikTok, but I think we're really heading towards a crisis of nuance if we're not there already. It feels like all discussions we have lately are in extremes and absolutes with like no room for context or allowances. The response to my last episode about Katy Perry is a great little case study in itself. If you missed it, the title of the episode is "Are We Bad People for Making Fun of Katy Perry?" And I talk about her recent antics in space, obviously, but also some background on why I find her to be problematic, as well as a little bit of grace for her, because it does feel like the internet is currently in the middle of a Katy Perry hate train. Actually, by the time this podcast episode goes out, I feel like unless she does something else crazy, we're probably moving out of the Katy Perry hate train because people are just bored. But if you ask the average person, I feel like people would still say they don't like her at this moment in time. I also recorded that episode before her tour started too. So yeah, that episode has only continued being relevant, I think, in the past few weeks. But anyway, I spoke about Katy Perry and pretty much had what I felt was a fair and neutral take. I don't like her personally, and I think she needs to be held accountable for her past behaviours, but it's not lost on me that she's a victim of misogyny in the fallout of all of this space stuff, and that time and time again it's obvious that nothing unites society like having a woman to hate on and tear down. I think that's a fair assessment of the situation, and I stand by everything I said. What's interesting is the response. Lots of people agreed with me, but I also had a lot of people very firmly on both sides of the argument who disagreed. There were people who said outright, we should not feel bad for bullying Katy Perry because she's an awful person or she's a billionaire. I don't actually know if she is a billionaire. Either way, we can agree she's rich. She's far richer than most of us will ever be in our lives. So that's a fair point. There were people on the other side who said I was bullying Katy and being way too hard on her. And there were also a few comments about how Katy Perry ended Lady Gaga, which I guess is always to be expected when we're talking about pop culture and a certain segment of stans get their feelings hurt. But anyway, all of that to say, maybe it's that some of the people commenting didn't watch the full video, but I felt like the comments I had in the more extreme views on both sides were just missing the nuance that I tried to convey in my podcast. I see this all the time with pop culture discussions. There's often an element of nuance or perspective that goes completely missing. And I think that's absolutely true when we also have these discussions about our current day divas. I think multiple things can be true at once. Doechii could have spoken to her team differently. Yes. Her tone could have been different. Yes. Would that have been nice? Yes. But that's not what happened. She yelled and she swore. So now what happens? What happens now? There needs to be some kind of resolve, which I think normally is accountability. In the real world, if you speak rudely to someone you work with, you would simply apologise once things have calmed down. But in the celebrity world, we're not privy to the conversations Doechii actually has with her team. So we can only go off of what she and her team communicate to us as the public. And honestly, at that point, I just kind of think to myself, is it really our business? Does it need a public statement? Does it need a press release? And what accountability is actually satisfying for us to see as the public anyway? Like, as I said earlier, if you zoom out from this a little bit, we're talking about a situation where one person was rude to somebody else. Nobody died. And that situation is happening at the same time as Kanye West releasing a Nazi album. And that's happening at the same time as J.K. Rowling gathering her army of transphobes. And that's happening at the same time as P. Diddy trying to claim his abuse of Cassie was mutual. Like, I hope my point is landing here. It's okay to be disappointed in celebrities. If their behaviour disappoints you, that's fine. But when it comes to accountability and seeking resolve, I think our energy is just better put towards things that actually matter more in the grand scheme of things. This doesn't really have impact. It has impact on maybe like, don't talk to people like shit, but it doesn't have impact in terms of like Kanye West desensitizing the public to Nazi imagery. One of these just seems bigger and more important. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, maybe I've got the wrong takeaway from this. Maybe people aren't actually as upset as they appear online. But if I'm being really honest, I think a lot of people to me seemed quite upset. I think I've mentioned before at some point how, like clockwork, when a woman does anything wrong, I never fail to see the words, "I knew I didn't like her for some reason," every single time. And I've most recently seen it directed at Tate McRae, because she announced that she's doing a song with Morgan Wallen, who is racist. What if I told you, when female celebrities do something bad, this is controversial. This actually is more controversial. If I told you when female celebrities do something bad and you say you knew all along you didn't like them for some reason, I don't think it's because you have a super fine-tuned intuition. I think it's just because you're a little bit misogynistic. Because everybody in society is a little bit misogynistic because we're part of that society. So, yeah, if you're saying, "I knew I didn't like her for some reason," the some reason in question is just sexism. Maybe that's controversial. I don't know, but that's my take, at least. But like, especially with Tate McRae, right? Who actually knows these people well enough to say either way whether we should like them or not? Like, especially Tate McRae. Who on earth knows anywhere near enough about Tate McRae to make that kind of judgment? Because all we see of that girl is a couple of dances on stage. I know she has an album, but like, I don't think I've ever seen a clip of her talking even. I feel like she just dances and sort of sings here and there. Like, I don't know enough about Tate McRae to be saying to you guys, I knew she was a bad person all along. I really don't think there's enough publicly available information about her. Alas. If Miss Tate McRae is getting heat for a song that isn't even released yet, as far as I know, or maybe it is. Did it come out yesterday? I don't know. Anyway, you can imagine the emotions I've seen people go through during all of these minor diva moments with the other girls, and part of me does wonder, is this a generational thing? Gen Z has grown up with cancel culture. In the past, PR teams would have their playbook of making everybody forget about whatever bad thing their clients have done. But in modern day internet times, every single bad thing every celebrity does is immortalized forever. And if they do anything wrong going forward, the bad things they've done in the past are reshared and reshared again and again for eternity. And I want to clarify, this take isn't necessarily in defense of celebrities, because for all of the trappings of fame, yes, they have got it easier than the majority of us. They are incredibly wealthy. They are incredibly privileged. But again, I just think nuance is just missing from all of these conversations. I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about celebrities with a well-established problematic image, and how for some people they've actually managed to thrive despite acting in certain ways or doing certain things that other people would have been cancelled into oblivion for. Let's just get into it. The most obvious example has to be Azealia Banks. You already knew who I was going to say. As soon as I said problematic, I'm sure you thought of Azealia Banks. Love her or hate her, you know exactly who she is. You've definitely at least smirked at one of her tweets before, and you might have even bobbed your head along to one of her songs. Maybe. Especially if you're gay, I think you've bobbed your head along to a song. But maybe you're actually like me, and this is a big reveal. You maybe were a big fan of Azealia Banks in the 2010s, and you've since tapped out because you had no way of predicting the things we would see her say and do following her debut. Let me just get this off my chest. It's not just 212. Like, she has an incredible catalogue from 1991 and Fantasy and Broke with Expensive Taste and like a bunch of other songs that I don't think were part of a specific album or EP. Like, she has a really good catalogue. And I tapped out quite early in the Azealia Banks career. So I haven't even listened to, like, I know she's got like Anna Wintour and New Bottega and The Big Big Beat. Like, I was tapped out of the fan base long before those even came out. So I know she's gone on to release more music that's supposedly quite good too. But just the stuff that she came out with while I was still tuned in was excellent. She is a fierce musical talent. But alas, sadly, what she's more famous for than those songs is the things she says about people and her general commentary on pop culture and on current events. But maybe this isn't actually a sad thing, and maybe she's making more money from being a pop culture current news events commentator. I don't know her business like that. But one thing is for certain, she has evaded cancel culture. While many people do not listen to her, do not support her, do not follow her online, there are many people who do support her and even buy tickets to see her perform. She just went on a sold-out tour across Europe. She's headlining a festival in the UK this summer. Like, the demand is still there for Azealia Banks, despite everything. And the relationship she has with her audience has been so highly curated that she could literally insult the people of an entire country, say she's going to show up late to the show, and people will still be there ready and waiting to see her perform. And sometimes the performances aren't even good. Like, sometimes she kills it on stage from what I see, but sometimes she's cutting the show short, or she's just stood up there looking like she doesn't want to be there. Her fans know there's a risk of that when they go, but they still show up and show out for Azealia Banks. Who knew? How has she done it then? How has she managed to sustain a fan base despite being one of the most hated people on the internet? We've got the world clutching their pearls over Doechii asking for umbrellas, and yet Azealia Banks is selling out shows. How does that happen? Here's my theory. So I think what we've got here is a dynamic I've seen before with Trixie Mattel, the drag queen, and her fans. And I can't remember who it was who explained this, so apologies, but let me know if anyone remembers what I'm talking about, and please put it in the comments who said this. But essentially what I heard is that Trixie is so successful because she doesn't apologise. If she makes a rude joke that offends people, she just doesn't apologise for it. And then her fans know not to look to her for an apology when she does something bad. She has asserted that apologising for offending people just isn't part of her brand. It isn't part of her relationship with her audience, and so her audience can choose to stop tuning in, or simply they can get over it. Either one. And it works for her because now she doesn't have a group trying to cancel her every time she does anything. Yes, there are some hurt feelings, and yes, maybe there's a few upset people who have tuned out for life, that could have still been her supporters because she didn't apologise for whatever thing she did that upset those people. But on the whole, she's got this dynamic with her fans that works for her. And I think this is what Azealia Banks has also managed to capture. She has said the F slur more times than any of us can count. She has offended potentially every marginalised group in society in one way or another. And yet she has a very dedicated gay fan base who retweet her hot takes and they stream her music. And as I say, they buy tickets to her shows. Why is that? Because anyone who takes a hard stance against that behaviour has already left the chat. If you were offended by Azealia Banks enough to tap out, then you've already tapped out. And if that doesn't bother you, then you're still here, still in the audience. It's a dynamic that has me wondering if this is what Chappell Roan is trying to achieve herself. Please don't be offended by this comparison, by the way. I know Chappell hasn't actually done anything near the levels of problematic as Azealia Banks, but it's more just to say that I think she's setting a level of expectation with her audience. I don't know, though, if it's actually working. And that has me wondering, like, what is the uncommon denominator here? Is it that Chappell Roan's fan base is younger than Azealia Banks? Do Gen Z require their pop stars to be super sanitized, or can they handle diva personalities? Has being brought up with cancel culture meant that women who aren't perfectly pristine just doesn't land with Gen Z? Like, what is the difference between the two? Why are they being received so differently? I think if Chappell Roan continues down this path, in theory, it should work eventually. She'll always have haters, yes, but most people in the public eye have haters anyway. Even the really popular people like Sabrina Carpenter, who I would describe as fairly inoffensive, even she has haters. But what Chappell will have is a fan base who have been hardened towards any controversy, who will stick around even if she makes mistakes or upsets people, because they've literally been trained for this. She's put them through the ringer. If Sabrina Carpenter has some kind of controversy or scandal, which I'm sure at some point she will, because name a celebrity with zero scandals, I think her fan base just won't be able to handle it, because she's likeable, relatable, she seems like the kind of person you want to be friends with, and maybe that would be to her detriment when it comes to surviving the high standards we have for our celebrities. Another really interesting case study we saw of this was with Doja Cat. You might remember that she had that era where it was almost like she was being purposefully problematic and doing things to try and piss her fans off. Like, she was out there calling her old albums cash grabs and blocking people who came to her with any criticism. Even if they had a point, she was blocking them. I'm glad she's toned that down now, because for a minute it felt like the longer she was going to keep going with that, the only people that would be left would be like yes men who would literally accept any and everything she would do. But problematic stuff aside, I did really admire Doja for changing her image so drastically when her career was peaking. If you remember, she was literally on top of the world. Say So was absolutely huge. Planet Her had a bunch of hits, and instead of knuckling down and releasing another pop album, she shaved her head and started dipping her toe into really creative looks that weren't concerned with beauty being the focus. And I loved that. And the public didn't like it. And they said shaving her head was demonic. So she decided to play with imagery she knew that that sector of the public would perceive as demonic. And honestly, I think that's fierce. I really do. Sadly, though, Doja did lose me as a fan temporarily because for me, she just wasn't vocal enough about a certain scandal she had where she wore a t-shirt with someone who apparently was a neo-Nazi on it. I didn't like that, and then I couldn't get behind like blocking your fans because they're saying your boyfriend is really abusive. Like, it was just very messy and icky, and I didn't love that. So I did tap out. of the Doja fan base for a little bit. But alas, she's broken up with that guy now, and the t-shirt thing I think she addressed eventually. And also she just seems calmer and a little bit more chill now, less angry at the world. I'm excited for a new Doja Cat era, and I hope she continues to fuck with the public a little bit, honestly, because I think it's kind of, I guess she had her experimental kind of era, but I don't want her to just pick up where like Say So left off. I feel like there's still room for a creative, different Doja. Um, like I really enjoyed her knowing that everyone wanted her to have like long hair and soft glam, and then she decided to just shave her head and do graphic liner every day. Like that was fierce. So she can keep that up. Just leave the neo-Nazi t-shirts where they belong, in the trash. Please, we've already been desensitized enough to fascism in pop culture. We don't need Doja Cat carrying that on, please. I don't know if social media is to blame for this distinction between Gen Z and below and how everybody else perceives celebrity scandals, or if it's just that like several crucial years of societal development were lost to COVID, maybe. I myself, I'm elder Gen Z. I was born as early as you can be to still technically qualify as part of Gen Z. So while I do relate with the Gen Z kids, I do feel different to them at the same time. My first phone was a Motorola Razr, the flip one, whereas for these younger kids in Gen Z, maybe it was a BlackBerry or even an iPhone. It's just different levels of tech. Like, we were all surrounded by tech growing up in Gen Z and Gen Alpha and below. It's just the tech was different. And I think that does have a big impact. Like, I wasn't on social media on my Motorola Razr, but BlackBerry had BBM built in, and iPhones obviously have all the social media on them. So it is different. But having that slightly older perspective, I definitely see big changes in things post-COVID. I see a lot of discourse around concert etiquette nowadays and how Gen Z don't know how to behave at shows. And I see clubbing as an activity dying out, which absolutely hurts my soul because we can't lose clubbing, especially not replacing it with bottomless brunch. It's just not the same. We can't let clubbing die, guys, especially not for bottomless brunch. It hurts my soul. And look, I don't want this to sound like I'm ragging on young people, but there's definitely a change in how we view and talk about celebrities. You knew I was going to talk about Lady Gaga at some point, so here it is. And to those of you new to my podcast who are still tuned in right now, hello, I'm Big Pink Energy, and I'm one of the biggest Lady Gaga fans on the planet. That's me. But what I want to say on this is I've been a fan of Gaga since her debut in 2008, and I've been active in the fan base online since probably 2009, honestly. And the spaces I was in haven't changed much from back then. It was Twitter and it was the Gaga Daily forums. The majority of people in those spaces with me were gay boys, similar ages to me, or maybe slightly older or slightly younger, but there were some girls, but it was a lot of gay boys, pretty much, is who I was socialising with online. And I've seen the fan base change a lot in, like, let's say the last 7 or 8 years, and maybe it could be down to a larger female presence, which I love, but I see a lot of young girls talk about Lady Gaga in a really infantilizing way that I just don't think was ever really there before. I see people post about her as if she's a cute, sweet, like, baby girl, which is just wild to me because that's not the Lady Gaga I looked up to when I was a teen growing up and discovering who I was. And, you know, it's just a very different perspective on the same person, which is really interesting to me. And look, that's not to say that women can't be multiple things, but for me, Lady Gaga was a powerful force of a woman. So, you know, she was hardworking, hyper-focused, confident, driven. She was so unique at times, it felt as if she wasn't even human. It felt honestly like she was operating on another level to the rest of us. It felt like she was put on Earth to be an icon, honestly. That's how she felt to me. And I still feel that way about her even now, in the moments she decides to tap into that side of herself, for sure. Like her current show, the Mayhem show that she's touring around, that's a perfect example of how she's just an absolute force to be reckoned with on stage. And she's not in the same ballpark as everybody else in the celebrity world. Maybe Beyonce. Her and Beyonce seem to be the main two, and then it's like everyone else is underneath for me anyway. But like, you watch Lady Gaga perform and you just think, how on earth is she even real? So I always feel a little bit odd when I see people talk about her in ways that position her as childlike, because it's just not at all the identity that I've had in my mind for her. And maybe I'm sheltered and there's just more lesbian representation in the fan base now, and maybe this is just how sapphics talk. But let me know if I'm wrong here, but I just think the way we view celebrities is so different now. Because what do you mean Lady Gaga, a 39-year-old woman, is a baby girl? Like, I don't get it. I'm pretty sorry. You're in your 20s. Why are you saying that about her? I don't understand it. I think I don't know if this is just on me or if anyone else feels that way, but whatever. I do wonder as well if it's an accessibility thing. Like, this feeds into the parasocial relationships we have with celebrities too. So, for example, in the past, to see what celebrities were up to, you would watch late night talk shows and read the papers and listen to the radio and just generally consume media to see what was happening with celebrities. But now, if I want to see what Megan Thee Stallion is up to, for example, and I often do want to see what Megan Thee Stallion is up to, I love her, I just go to her Instagram, or I can even go to her TikTok, where she's not just showing me what she's up to, she's making her favourite recipes and she's showing her fitness routines. Like, I can literally see what workouts she does. We have so much access now to celebrities and their worlds, and this is happening in ways we never used to do it. Like, it used to only be reality stars like Kim Kardashian and her family who showed us that level of intimacy, but now it's like near enough everybody. So the dynamic between them and us has changed. The dynamic between celebrities and fans has changed. We feel less like their fans and more like their peers, and sometimes it even veers into that parasocial territory where we feel less like their fans and more like their friends. So maybe that's why we feel like Lady Gaga isn't a pop icon floating somewhere beyond the human plane of existence, but that's why we feel like she's a sweet little baby girl and we can pinch her little cheeks. And maybe that's why when Doechii asks for umbrellas, we feel entitled calling her out, because she's not better than any of us just because she has fame on her side. The illusion of fame as power has just dissolved. There's no mystery anymore. We as the public feel we know all there is to know about celebrities and their lives. And to further land my point, I don't think people felt this way when Naomi Campbell told a reality show contestant never to compare themselves to her ever. I don't think people felt this way when Mariah Carey said she didn't know Jennifer Lopez. These are the OG divas. This behaviour is baked into their branding and who they are as stars. I'm just not entirely convinced it would land in the same way today as it did back then. And I think that's what we're seeing with Chapel Roan. Although I do think she'll get there eventually. I do think so. Gen Z are only going to keep growing up with her, and they're also hopefully going to get more and more used to Chapel. And I think she's actively managing the public's expectations of her as she goes along, and fair enough. I do think this general sentiment has had effects on the entertainment industry as a whole for the worse, though. It's not just how people behave in the press, but even reality shows are so different now. People used to go on reality shows, yes, to be on TV, but not to launch careers or become influencers. They could behave badly on an episode of a show and maybe have a nasty article or two written about them. But all in all, there's very few reality show moments from years and years ago, pre-social media, that we're still talking about in 2025. Whereas in the new age of memes and social media discussion, everyone on reality shows is now acutely aware of how they're acting, whether they're playing up the drama for airtime, or holding back their true feelings to escape the wrath of fans and trolls after the episode ends. I think what I'm trying to get at here is it's quite refreshing, actually, in this age of everyone being so concerned with image and public perception, that we have got people like Chapel Roan who just do not give a shit about disappointing people and having to have a perfect public-facing image at all times. Or even at any times. I think realness in general used to be much more baked into entertainment, and now realness looks like blandness. Realness now is like someone is seen as real and vulnerable if they post a really generic mental health quote on their Instagram story. Like, that is what vulnerability is now. Even I literally just saw a clip of The Weeknd at his movie premiere talking about mental health and how it's okay not to be okay. And I really like The Weeknd, actually, but I'm not sure why we as the public need to see that from him. Nor do I understand why that makes him more relatable for his audience. And to reiterate, like, I am his audience. I am a fan. I really like him. I'm just unaffected by him saying we're all human and it's okay not to be okay. It does nothing for me personally. And that's not to say that men can't discuss mental health, by the way. What I'm really trying to say here is that when Abel, The Weeknd, drops the facade of being the pop star or the musician or now attempted actor to say something vulnerable, it's the same we're all human, it's okay not to be okay message that we've just heard 100 times from 100 people. And we eat it up and we accept it and we say, that's very good, thank you for that. You are a man talking about mental health, that's very progressive. But when Chapel Roan shows realness, or when Doechii shows realness, we just cannot comprehend it. I'd go as far as to say being a diva in public in 2025 is more vulnerable than men speaking up about mental health. Maybe that's controversial. Maybe that's too generic, but I don't think there's the same risk for men as there is for women. And I think if it were The Weeknd who had been caught on camera asking for more fucking umbrellas at the Met Gala, he might have got trolled for a few days, but it would just not be on the level of discussion that there was for Doechii. It might have even just been written off as him being assertive with his team. Like, who knows? This podcast episode was a bit of a long journey. I hope you still enjoyed listening to it. My general point I want to make is, as always, question everything you see in the media and ask, does it benefit the patriarchy or not? Also remember that not all sexism is conscious. We are part of a misogynistic society. So if you're about to type in my comments that you'd still dislike Chapel Roan if she were a man, just go ahead and hit backspace a couple of times, please. Because I think anyone who leaves those kinds of comments has just missed my point entirely. If all sexism was a conscious choice that we made to participate in, I think it would have been eradicated by now. I don't think sexism would exist if it was something we were all consciously choosing to do. And the same goes for racism and homophobia. Like, these problems don't plague us because we are consciously choosing to be racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, etc. I take that back. I think most transphobia currently is a choice. But that's just because transphobia is so bad right now. But you get my point. When you're part of a society that perpetuates those things, that marginalizes people, it does rub off on us, and we do have unconscious biases about these things. But also, if you take anything away from this episode, maybe it's just that we should all be a little bit less reactionary in general, maybe. Do we need 200 viral tweets every time a woman does something controversial? Does the discussion need to go on for days and days and sometimes weeks. Maybe I'm part of the problem here for adding fuel to the fire, but I don't know. I don't think every single thing needs to be picked apart for public consumption. Like, again, the Diddy trial happening currently, I just don't think we as the public need to know every single thing Cassie has said in her testimony. I don't think it benefits anybody. Like, we all agree it was abuse. We all agree she's a survivor. She's testifying in court to help ensure that he's prosecuted accurately and kind of share her truth on the situation. But beyond that, I don't think it's our business to know every single detail about her relationship with him unless that's something that she wants to share voluntarily. I just don't think most of these things are really our business, and I don't think they really benefit us to know so much. I don't know. I think entertainers should do their job and be entertainers. And yeah, they're in the public eye, so it's different. But if you work in a bakery, you're not expected to be a baker when the bakery closes. But when you're in the public eye, you're expected to be that public persona 24/7. As I say, it sounds like I'm defending celebrities a lot. And I think I'm conscious that might be not the most appealing point of view to sit and listen to, because celebrities rub their privilege in our faces every single day with their wealth and their access to things that we just don't have as the general public. So I get it's not a level playing field, but I do also think there's got to be some give and take there. Anyway, I'm sort of talking in tangents now, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'll just say this. I love divas, personally. You can admire celebrities and or their work without wanting to be best friends with them as well. Like, a great example for that for me personally is Charli XCX. I think her music is fun. I think her image is fun. I have a good time at her show. I loved seeing her at Coachella. I don't necessarily want to befriend her and become part of her inner circle, and that doesn't stop me from connecting with her music. Like, I think the way musicians and celebrities are often marketed to us is in that way. I could see myself being friends with Megan Thee Stallion. I could see myself joking around with Sabrina Carpenter. I could see myself having a drink with Cardi B. But the divas, the Beyoncés, the Mariahs of the world, their art speaks for itself, and for them, that's enough. And for their fans, that's enough. And for me, that's also enough. I hope that makes sense. And I hope this was mostly coherent to listen to. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, subscribe if you want to see more, listen more, leave your comments, let's discuss, let's debate, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, whatever you think. But yeah, that's it for this one. Best wishes and kisses. Bye bye bye.